Today, November 2nd, 2018, UN recognized the International Day to End Impunity. In Turkey, about the Kurdish issues, law enforcement and administrators are being protected due to the reasons like counter-terrorism or public order. Murder and sex crime perpetrators are being protected due to the reasons like machismo, homophobia, transphobia, and public morality, with spent convictions, null prosequis, and good conduct time practices. Impunity is being brought into daily practice in such matters. For evaluating those issues, we are together with Nadire Mater from Bianet, Şanay Yurdatapan from IFOX, and Özgün Özçer from P24, who are the members of IFEX in Turkey.
Today, journalists, rights defenders, journalistic organizations and right organizations all over the world try to do some meetings or protestations for the journalists on behalf of the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. They all trying to create awareness for journalists, for those who were killed in their own country or in any place in the world, for their colleagues. This impunity is a very important issue for not just for journalists actually, for everybody. Especially if we are talking about Turkey, it is crucial for workers, for writers, for people anywhere, or for academicians. And when UN accept this special day for the journalists who were killed anywhere in the world, they give these responsibilities to the states to promote a safe environment for journalists. But the problem is, it's good and it's very welcomed in a way. But the problem is, governments are the problem mostly. That's why it's a problem in a way to give the responsibility to prepare safe environment for journalists. But we still hope that one day it will be okay. But it's not because of government wants, because of the journalists who are struggling for the impunity and for the freedom of expression. Pardon. UNESCO gave some figures during the last days about the journalists and who were killed during the last 12 years, starting with 2006 until October 31st, 2018. 1,096 journalists were killed all over the world, and it means every 4 days one journalist or media workers are faced with that.
So, unfortunately, impunity is one of the main issues that we have to deal with at Amnesty International in our work on Turkey. It's been a big part of the research that we've done over years in Turkey, and also a part of the ongoing campaigns that we have on Turkey. In recent years, we've looked at a range of human rights issues. For example, the situation for freedom of expression, and in particular in recent years, attacks on civil society, attacks on human rights defenders, activists, journalists, and others, unfair criminal prosecutions which are opened against them, and unfortunately in certain cases convictions as well. Another issue that we've raised, and in fact we launched a report on this month, is the situation for arbitrary dismissals of public sector workers under the state of emergency, and in particular the focus of our most recent report, the fact that they don't have any effective means to challenge these arbitrary dismissals more than 2 years after the first dismissals took place. So we can see that the common theme in terms of a lot of the work that we've undertaken on Turkey is the fact that there are severe problems with the judicial situation in the country. A judiciary should work as a remedy against human rights abuses, but unfortunately in Turkey the opposite is happening. The judiciary itself is responsible for a whole series of abuses of people's rights. But if we look at the cases of impunity that in particular we focused on as Amnesty International, you can see that the problems don't start at the trial phase. For example, a large part of our work on the Gezi Park protests of 2013 had to do with impunity, the fact that there weren't effective investigations launched in the face of widespread, routine even police violence, excessive use of force against peaceful protesters. And 5 years on, we can see that in the vast majority of cases there have been no effective investigations into these cases of police violence. One of the cases that we focused on and continue to work on is the case of Hakan Yaman, who was basically at the wrong place at the wrong time, at the scene of a demonstration. Even though he wasn't taking part, it was very close to his home. He was the victim of a completely unprovoked attack by police officers, and despite the fact that there was a police water cannon truck and officers next to the vehicle caught in a video, 5 years on there has been no effective investigation into this incident, which left Hakan Yaman with life-threatening injuries, losing almost completely the sight in one eye, and unfortunately this is a classic example of the sort of impunity cases that we are looking at in Turkey. Another example is the situation of human rights abuses in the context of the 24-hour curfews that were enforced across areas of the southeast of Turkey, especially in 2015 and 2016. The use of heavy weaponry in these built-up urban areas, resulting in injuries and deaths to unarmed residents living in these areas. Again, in this case, it's a situation where a whole series of reported, documented abuses haven't resulted in investigations, and those responsible have not been brought to justice. One case from this period, not in a curfew situation, but in the south, in the east of Turkey, in Diadin, where two young people who were working at a bakery were again unfortunately in the wrong place at the wrong time, and ended up being shot by police officers. Again, in this case there is a significant amount of evidence, including video footage from the scene, if not the event itself. And again, despite the years having passed, there is no criminal prosecution against police officers in this incident, despite the basic facts not being disputed. These unfortunately some of the emblematic cases for a much more widespread and entrenched culture of impunity in Turkey.
I'd like to start my statement with the message of Annie Game, Executive Director of IFX. Coming together in a concrete action to have a greater impact has been at the heart of the IFX network since its inception 26 years ago. It is how we work to defend the rights of people to express themselves freely and without any fear. When the worst happens, it is how we work to hold their killers accountable. Lately, the worst is happening far too often. Each year, UNESCO maintains a list of journalists who have been killed around the world. As I write this, there are 86 names on the 2018 list. On this International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, we acknowledge all those who work in this shared endeavor and continue to show that together our voices move mountains. We continue to advocate in the cases of the violent crimes committed against Colombian journalist Bedoya Lima, Cambodian activist and broadcaster Kem Lay, Bahraini photojournalist Ahmed Ismail Hassan, Pakistani reporter Shan Dahar, Gambian editor Musa Saidi Khan, and journalist Ebrima Mane, and Maltese investigative journalist Galizia, among so many others. Persistence pays off. We've seen perpetrators jailed in Bedoya Lima's case, reputations paid to Mene's family. After an extended campaign to address the climate of impunity in Paraguay, organized by IFX Latin America and Caribbean Network, IFX ALC, the man behind the 2014 murder of Paraguayan journalist Pablo Medina was found guilty. It was the first time that someone who ordered an attack on a journalist in Paraguay had been sentenced for that crime. Before he was killed, Khashoggi has been a prime target of daily, unrelenting online abuse from Riyadh-based troll farm that aimed to smother the voices of all Saudi dissidents. One of his last acts was in support of volunteer army working to combat those trollers in the online sphere. They call themselves the Electronic Bees, and just 11 days before his death, Khashoggi was on Twitter that the bees were coming. As an image of human rights defenders, it is both compelling and inspiring, a committed swarm with a shared focus and the power of numbers. Those who would threaten or disturb us should take heed. So, in Turkey, impunity is at the top. It's a Turkish expression. We say, balık baştan kokar, which means the fish corrupts by the head. According to Article 101 of Turkish Constitution, the state president should be impartial. And according to 105, that brings out the impunity of the state president. He can only be accused of betraying the country. But that is not defined in any code. As an international law of the law, and it's the same in Turkish Constitution, Article 38. There can be no punishment when there is not a defined crime. And also, betraying the country is not defined in any code in Turkey. Once it was forgotten, but also forgotten in the Constitution. So this means if the president is very angry with the opposition leaders and kills all of them, what will happen? No one knows. Now, the greatest problem is not only that, the practice. The president of Turkey today, Erdogan, has said once that I will not be a usual president. According to Article 101 of the Constitution, it was that when some person was elected as state president, his relations with his or her party should be abolished immediately and should be impartial. Then he also has changed it, and now a person can be a member of a party and a state president. But at the time he did that, it was not so. But what did he? In the first coming general elections, he organized open-air meetings as state president, which should be impartial, but he demanded from the people 400 seats in the parliament where totally 550 seats existed. And when he was asked, how can you do that? It's impossible. You should be impartial. He said, well, haven't I told you already that I would not be a usual president? It's just like some people in the traffic, just giving left signal and immediately turning left. Well, giving a left signal means that that car should change the lane, but it should never give that car to violate the traffic laws and turn left immediately whenever he wants. It's something just like that. Totally, what is done in Turkey now? First, the structure of judges and the prosecutors committee was changed and taken under the absolute control of the administration. This was the first step. The second system, the judicial system and structure of many courts were changed. Some courts were abolished, new ones established. Third step, who appointed the new judges and prosecutors? Well, that Judges and Prosecutors Committee, whose structure was changed and totally taken under control of the administration. They did that. And it is a very sophisticated sort of crime, but an absolute impunity. Came to power over elections, and it's very democratic, of course. But after coming, changing everything.
Cezasızlık sorunu Türkiye'nin ceza adalet sistemi açısından son derece önemli bir mesele. Cezasızlık deyince Türkiye'de akla gelen ilk mesele Kürt meselesi ve ilk akla gelen bölge Doğu ve Güneydoğu bölgesi. Özellikle 1990'lı yıllarda bu bölgede çok yaygın olarak insanlığa karşı suç olarak tanımlayabileceğimiz ağır insan hakları suçları işlendi. Bunların başında köy yakmalar, yargısız infazlar, zorla kaybetmeler gibi ve sistematik bir şekilde uygulanan işkence. Nitekim Avrupa İnsan Hakları Mahkemesi gerek köy yakma, gerek yargısız infazlarda ve gerekse zorla kaybetme meselelerinde çok sayıda karar vermişti ve bu kararların hepsinde net olarak şu tespiti yapmıştır mahkeme. Bu konuda maalesef Türkiye'de etkin ve işleyen bir hukuki sistemin olmadığını, bu tür suçları soruşturma konusunda ki mekanizmaların yetersiz olduğu, Cumhuriyet savcılarının bu konudaki soruşturma usullerinin de son derece yanlış ve hatalı olduğu ve eksik olduğu konusunda onlarca davada ahim tespitte bulunmuştur. Yakın zamanda açılan bazı davalar, örneğin özellikle Cizre bölgesinde 20'yi aşkın kişinin kaybedilmesi ya da yargısız infazına ilişkin olarak bir dava açıldı. Kamuoyuna temiz öz davası olarak bilinen bu dava. Maalesef bu davada çok önemli deliller olmasına rağmen, çok önemli veriler olmasına rağmen beraat ile sonuçlandı. Bugüne kadar bu davaların hiçbirine mahkum olan bir kamu görevlisinden bahsetmek mümkün değildir. Maalesef suçlanan kişiler, bu olaya karıştığı iddia edilen kişiler aynı zamanda kolluk görevlisi olarak bir soruşturma merci olarak yer almışlar, delilleri toplamışlar, daha doğrusu toplamamışlar ve gizlemişler. Bu da Türkiye'nin cezasızlık politikasının bir başka yönü. Türkiye'deki cezasızlık meselesinin temel faktörü ya da zihinsel algısı şundan kaynaklı. Bir, uygulayıcıların, özellikle hakim ve savcıların ve diğer kolluk personelinin devletin bekası söyleminin arkasına gizlenmesi. Yani eğer söz konusu olan devletin bekasıysa gerisi teferruattır diye bu tür suçların koşturulması ve soruşturulmasının maalesef önüne geçen bir zihniyet hakim. Bu Türkiye'deki adalet sisteminin en temel problem alanlarından birisi. Bunun tabii kısa sürede aşılması da maalesef çok imkan dahilinde gözükmüyor. Nitekim hakim ve savcıların notları Hakimler ve Savcılar Yüksek Kurulu tarafından tutulmakta. Bu kişiler hakim ve savcıların terfisine bu vesileyle kolaylaştırıcı ya da zorlaştırıcı bir etki yaratmaktadırlar. Bu Türkiye'deki hakim-savcı bağımsızlığı açısından çok son derece önemli bir mesele. Biz geçmişte olduğu gibi bundan sonraki süreçte de bu tür suçlara ilişkin olarak etkin soruşturmaların ve koşturmaların yürütülmesi, davaların açılması ve bu davaların takibi konusuna elimizden geleni bundan sonra da yapmaya devam edeceğiz.
Journalist in '96, we marked the death of Uğur Mumcu, an investigative journalist in Turkey, and even more recently, and although it's 10 years ago, it seems only yesterday that a friend of ours, Hrant Dink, the editor of an Armenian newspaper, was gunned down in the street. And the instinct of us all during these times is to appropriate blame, and very often that blame is put on the impunity of the state, which thinks it can get away with acting against members of our profession. But I have to say that one of my own takeaways, because I did actually work in the Turkish language press and have worked in media here for decades, is that we can't simply blame someone else, that we as a profession have to blame ourselves, that if today is the day against impunity, it should also be a day against the complicity of our own profession sometimes in not standing up for the things that we should be standing up for. That the press can only protect itself, the pen can only be mighty when it is free and independent. And when that power of the press is compromised by the financial interests of its proprietors or the political interests of others, then it exposes journalists to unacceptable risks. Yes, I mean, journalism is a dangerous profession. Actuarially, it's more dangerous being a journalist than selling insurance. But it's not the most dangerous profession in this country. It's far more dangerous to be a worker on the new airport in Turkey than it is to be a journalist. The number of workers who are killed is alarming and astronomical. Now, who should be standing up for these people who are dying on a building site? It should be the newspapers. It should be my own profession which should be defending these people. And yet how can they be defending these people when one of the largest media groups itself is owned by the very company that is building that airport? So when we speak about impunity, we have to accept that we ourselves are sometimes responsible for feeding that impunity and fueling that impunity. That this is not a new phenomena is attested to by the expression quis custodian ipsos custodes, who guards the guardians. This is something that was uttered by Juvenal in the 1st or 2nd century, so it's a problem that predates our own careers. But in a free and democratic society, it should be our own profession, it should be the media, it should be journalism, which protects against the protector, which guards against the guardians. And when we do not do that, when we are in league with the guardians, then we expose both ourselves and the rest of society to these risks. So on the day of impunity, let us not simply blame others for what is going on, but blame the standards within our own profession. Yes, it's true that journalists are now being signaled out or being targeted by politicians. The Line press, the Guardian correspondent who was beaten up at a Trump rally, the fact that the mood has changed in which the fourth estate is no longer regarded as sacrosanct and pure and having a sense of its own integrity. But in order to combat that prejudice, we must reassert our own integrity. And that, I think, is something that we can all practice on this particular day.
Biz 1997 yılından bu yana devlet güçleri tarafından cinsel işkenceye uğrayan kadınlara ücretsiz hukuki yardım veren bir ofiste çalışıyoruz. Bugüne kadar 600 civarında kadın ve trans kadın bize yaşadıkları cinsel şiddet nedeniyle başvurdular. Şimdi devlet güçleri tarafından cinsel şiddete uğrayan kadınlar açısından büyük bir cezasızlık söz konusu. Çünkü aslında işkence ve kadına yönelik işkence bir devlet politikası. Aslında yazılı hukuktan kaynaklı çok önemli sorunlarımız vardı 2005 yılına kadar. Örneğin 2005 yılına kadar Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda kadına yönelik şiddeti düzenleyen bölümün başlığı genel ahlak ve aileye karşı cürümlerdi. Yani kadın bir varlık olarak dahi kabul edilmiyordu. Ailenin ve ahlakın bir unsuru olarak görülüyordu. Tecavüz suçunun tanımı çok yetersizdi. Cinsel taciz hiç tanımlanmıyordu Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda. Yine çok önemli bir durum, 2005 yılına kadar Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda bir cinayetin namus nedeniyle işlenmesi otomatikman indirim sebebiydi. Biz çok uzun mücadeleler verdik kadın hareketi ve kadın hukukçular olarak ve 2005 yılında Türk Ceza Kanunu'nda önemli değişiklikler oldu. Kadına yönelik cinsel şiddet bir bölüm başlığı olarak yasaya girdi. Tecavüz suçunun tanımı değişti. Cinsel taciz bir suç tanımı olarak yasaya girdi. Namus cinayetleri indirim sebebi olmaktan çıkarıldı. Ama bunlar yazılı hukukta yapılan değişiklikler. Uygulamada hala çok büyük sorunlarımız var. Örneğin cinsel işkencenin tanımlanmasında hukuki zorunluluk olmamasına rağmen mahkeme ve savcılıklar sadece adli tıp raporlarını yani resmi bilirkişilik kurumunun raporlarını kabul ediyorlar. Oysa ki Avrupa İnsan Hakları Mahkemesi kararlarına göre bağımsız hekim raporlarının da delil olarak kabul edilmesi gerekiyor. Ama bu konuda hala çok geride Türkiye hukuku. Kadına yönelik şiddet konusunda cezasızlığı ikiye ayırmak gerekiyor. Eğer şiddeti devlet güçleri işlediyse kesinlikle sonuna kadar bir cezasızlık söz konusu. Bize bugüne kadar çok sayıda kadın ve trans kadın başvurmasına rağmen bugüne kadar bir tek polis, asker, korucu, bir tek kişi bile kadına yönelik şiddet gerekçesiyle mahkemelerce cezalandırılmadı. Sadece 3 korucu ceza aldılar Mardin'de. O da küçük yaştaki kızın isteği dahilinde, nasıl oluyorsa isteği dahili cinsel ilişkiye girmekten o zamanki yasaya göre. Bundan dolayı çok küçük bir ceza aldılar. Bunun dışında devlet güçlerinden hiçbiri ceza almadı. Diğer dosyalarda yani adli suçlarda ise kadına yönelik şiddet alanında iyi kararları olan mahkemeler var ama hala tahrik unsuru birçok mahkeme tarafından kullanılıyor. Oysa ki biz kadına yönelik şiddetin siyasi şiddetten ayrı olarak düşünülemeyeceğini çok iyi biliyoruz. Bu nedenle kadına yönelik şiddet politik şiddettir ve her kadın cinayeti politik cinayettir diyoruz. Çünkü Türkiye Cumhuriyeti Devleti'nin resmi politikaları son derece militer, erkek egemen ve feodal. Bu anlayışla biçimlenmiş bir devlet bakışı var. Doğal olarak yargıya da bu bakış hakim. Özellikle trans kadınlar açısından son derece homofobik kararlar veriyorlar. Bu nedenle biz Türkiye'nin altına imza attığı uluslararası sözleşmelere uymasını istiyoruz. Çünkü birçok sözleşmeye imza atmış Türkiye ve anayasasına göre kendi iç hukukunun üzerinde kabul ediyor uluslararası hukuku. Örneğin kadınlara yönelik şiddet konusunda bugüne kadar yapılmış en iyi sözleşme Avrupa Konseyi İstanbul Sözleşmesi. Ve bu sözleşme İstanbul'da imzalanmış ve Türkiye birinci imzacısı. Çok önemli bir sözleşme olmasına rağmen Türkiye'de yargı makamları maalesef bu sözleşmeyi bilmiyorlar bile. Eğer bu sözleşmeye uygun davransalar cezasızlık konusunda çok ileri adımlar atabiliriz. Ama bu Türkiye'nin genel sorunu. Türkiye bir hukuk devleti olamıyor. Yazılı hukukuyla uygulaması her zaman birbirinden farklı ve bundan en çok nasibini alanlar da kadınlar ve trans kadınlar oluyor.
Yes. If we have more to add, we go ahead. Now there.
Yeah. The impunity is a big threat actually, and then we journalists have to cope with this big threat, and then first of all, and the journalists, we have to be organized and we have to be in solidarity with each other, domestically and globally. And in Turkey, I'd like to say something, and then what we can do. I'm gonna try to answer these questions. First of all, the files of journalists who were killed should be open, and then most of them since never have been under trial, all these massacres, so the files should be reopened or opened. And then there should be a commission in the parliament, and this investigative commission should one by one should talk and discuss about all cases during the last 20 years or 30 years, whatever it is. And these commissions should be, at the end, should explain to the people, to the public, that why all these killings happened, who were responsible, and we have to know what happened in the past. On the other hand, it should be very important to share the stories of those who were killed with the public, and then this is the journalists, the journalists should write, should follow the cases, and should share whatever they know about those killings with the public.
A larger geopolitical game, and we see that the way the details of the murder have been leaking to the media have very much been an attempt to embarrass the Saudi government. Of course, they deserve to be embarrassed, but it's part of a sort of geostrategic bargaining for influence in the region. But of course, the greater irony, of course, is that while Turkey is playing this positive role, it is also the world's foremost jailer of journalists. I can recall writing an article for CPJ over 10 years ago in which I expressed the shock horror that there were 26 journalists in jail, and this put Turkey at the top of this frightful league of countries which jail their own journalists. Now, of course, that figure is over 175. It might be, 180. So it's hard to, as it were, ask for justice for our profession when justice is being so clearly denied many members of my profession who are now in jail. So, as I say, the way to get these people out, the way to call attention to this, is that the newspapers themselves have to be independent and have to be, why should anyone care about journalists in jail when journalists themselves don't seem to be caring for the rest of their society? So as long as we do our jobs in an impartial or biased way, which is the case in 80-90% of the branded media in many countries, including this, then we can't really expect the reciprocity of public opinion to really demand that governments cease this practice. So, if you're going to be a knight, you have to be a knight from the very beginning. we also have to protect and defend journalism.
It's the end of our International Day to End Impunity broadcast. We hope that there won't be any issue to discuss next year. Have a nice day.